So again, we're going to be mastering a song by the band Hey Duke, You Suck. I love saying it, but check them out everywhere. We are going to be working on the song called Your Shoes Will Never Be Warm. But this is actually a genre that I really enjoy working in, and it's you consider it pop punk, but I know that there's a lot of elements in pop punk now that go kind of into like in the hip hop realm. Like this one actually does have a breakdown in it where there's some like trap drums in it. It's one of the harder genres in my opinion to master, because with some genres there's a certain tolerance to like the level of distortion and aggression that you can get before it gets too much, before it gets too fatiguing. And then also to further kind of add to the challenge, at least in my opinion, live drums and electric guitars. I always say that they're the hardest instruments to work with in music, and by no means is that a bad thing. It's just the nature of the beast. You know, you got live drums; they have to have a certain impact, but you can't break that sound that they're supposed to have. And then same thing with electric guitars; they have to have that. They have to have that edge, but at the same time, you don't want them to be too edgy to where they're hard to listen to, and you also can't take too much out of them because then they lose their tone. So there's a lot of really little challenges in here, and I will say by already listening to the songs that this mix is really solid. So shout out to Adam. I think he is the main producer and the mix engineer on this. But let's go ahead and take a look at the project. Let's see here. So we got, let me go ahead and here we go. So basically what we're looking at, we're mastering in Ableton. Okay, so for those of you that are new to these streams, I do all of my mixing and mastering in Ableton Live and all my production. But we are looking at a pretty typical stem mastering session here. Okay, so we have things broken up here into just instrumental and vocal, right? And then when I open up the instrumental, we see different instrumental stems that I was given by Adam. And then we got about 5 different stems here for the instrumental. And then we only have a single vocal stem, which is fine. You know, the goal of mastering is not to remix the song, right? The reason why stem mastering is nice is because it gives us added flexibility, especially when we want things to get loud. It's good to have that added flexibility, especially with the drums. Like the last song, and I'm gonna you were listening to "Save Me," which I said is the song that they already have released. It's on all platforms. But I'll show you. We have one song that we're just almost done with. I think they gave me the first kind of round of feedback. They were pretty happy with it. And then we're gonna listen to the song that we're gonna be mastering now. Referencing is super, super important in mixing and mastering. And the reason we reference is because we want to be able to check the direction in which we're taking things, right? We don't just want to like jump in and start doing what we love or maybe what we do all the time to other music, because it's just not, it's music, right? It's different. Everything is different. Now, in the context of these singles and just sort of like my general mentality when I'm mastering things of a similar genre, it's like, I don't think me and the artist have agreed that this is necessarily part of an EP or a larger project. It very may well be, but my general goal is to reference the other music that we've done that we're happy with to get at least a feel as to what their vision is like, you know, what their expectations are for the music. So when I was mastering Madison, I was listening to Save Me to get me a feel for the loudness and just the overall impact and the quality, because, you know, Save Me has already been approved by them. They were happy with it. And then along the lines of referencing, we have to keep in mind the aspect of other professional music, right? So I was using some of the Machine Gun Kelly stuff for Save Me, and once I knew that those two things sounded competitive to each other, I now know that I can basically use Save Me as a sort of a bar, right? That's the bar that I want to achieve on the other singles. So definitely did that with Madison. And remember, they're all different vibes too, right? I mean, Save Me is like a huge like anthem kind of song, and like Madison is way more upbeat, a little bit more tighter, a little bit more I guess a little bit more intimate in that sense. And then and I think this new one is also kind of in the same vein in terms of the vibe. So what we're gonna do is I think we'll take a listen to Madison, just so that way you can hear something that's been mastered that feels similar to the one that we're about to do. And then what we're gonna do is listen to the pre-master, right, which is reflected in my stems, right? So I have up here the pre-master. If I solo that and hit play, and then if I unsolo that and play, we're gonna hear the stems. It's going to be nearly identical. Okay, there may be a slight variation because they have some limiting, maybe some mastering plugins on here, but I can tell you from what I've already heard that they're basically identical. So I'm starting where they left off, okay, and I have this mix here to kind of give me, as I'm mastering, I can go back and forth and listen. Like, am I making improvements? Am I losing any type of vibe that was there? That's generally part of my workflow. And then furthermore, we have these here to give us a feel of the vision where it's going, right? What the goal is, what the bar is. And that's what we're looking at. Cool. And as always, if you have any questions, Corey is on the chat, so he will be able to answer anything that you may immediately be asking. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we will take a break after a little bit, and I will go through and check out some of the questions. He'll throw some at me and just kind of give everybody a little bit of insight if there's anything you're curious about. But I'll do my best to explain things afterwards when we take that break and see if if there's any further questions, we'll answer them. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a listen. We're going to listen to Madison, and I'm going to do that first because, again, we are going to then hear the song that we're going to be mastering, because I want you to hear the difference, right? And that difference is what we're going to be adding to the pre-master to reach our goal, okay? So we're going to take a listen to Madison, which is the one that we just finished mastering. There may be some tweaks on it that we might be doing, but I think all in all, we're about 95 to 99% happy with this one. So here we go.
Madison, you take it out on me when you are mad at him. Why you always gotta go back to him? You don't really love me, do you? Madison, yeah, Madison, hey Madison, you take it out on me when you are mad at him. Why you always gotta go back to him? You don't really love me, do you? Madison, Madison, cause he's 6'3", tall, dark, and handsome, has a real job and a Rolls Royce Phantom. I'm here, broke, making music, shout out once a week, and so fucking useless. Wasting my time on you, maybe I should just leave so you hate me, like that he's an asshole and leaves you on red, and I am just a nice guy that answers every text. So naive to realize that it's me you need in your life, yeah. Madison, you take it out on me when you are mad at him. Why you always gotta go back to him? You don't really love me, do you? Madison, yeah, Madison, hey Madison, you take it out on me when you are mad at him. Why you always gotta go back to him? You don't really love me, do you? Madison, Madison, whoa, Madison, whoa, why you going back to him? Whoa, Madison, whoa, why you going back to him? And every time you fight with him, you take it out on me. I'm just a fucking punching bag that you're here for free. His girl looking at proudly good at cooking now. So stupid that I really suck at cooking now. Wasted, calling you baby, save me. You drive me so crazy. You like that he's a douchebag and treat you like shit. I am just a rebound, I buy you all the gifts too. Naive to realize that it's me you need in your life, yeah. Madison, you take it out on me when you are mad at him. Why you always gotta go back to him? You don't really love me, do you? Madison, yeah, Madison, hey Madison, you take it out on me when you are mad at him. Why you always gotta go back to him? You don't really love me, do you? Madison, Madison.
Okay, so I'm doing the fancy fade out. Yeah, I know this is a beast. Yes, this is like top level stuff that I could definitely hear on the radio and on every major playlist that hosts this kind of music. It's just awesome. So super fun project to work on. Now let's listen to the pre-master of the next song that we're doing today, which is Your Shoes Will Never Be Warm. Sorry, Your Shoes Will Never Be Warm. So listen to the difference. So you get the general vibe of that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to quickly transition to Madison so that way you can hear the difference in the impact, okay? So here's just, I'm going to play right from the stems here. Okay, so this is the song we're currently mastering. This is the pre-master. And here's Madison. That's the song that we're working on. So in general, there's a bit of an energy difference for me, at least, right? There's that, I like using that word impact because that kind of just sums it up for me. But so we're looking primarily to make these elements kind of pop out a little bit more, and not to mention the loudness. So right now we're looking at, we have the all of our references are gained down to -10. So there's a 10 dB difference, which is substantial. Between what the goal is in terms of loudness, right? So if I put Madison at Unity right now, that's going to be 10 dB louder. That's where the master is in terms of loudness. But we're talking about loudness here, of course, because we're talking about mastering. But one of the important aspects of mastering is making things have better impact in terms of translation, sonic quality, and just the overall experience of the music, and making sure that you're doing service to the music, right? Not just doing things for the sake of doing things. So when you eliminate the loudness factor, whether you're referencing a professionally mastered song or something from a previous project, it's good to gain match what you're doing, so that way you're not just hearing that and being like, oh yeah, it's louder, it's better. Like that's not the goal. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I'm basically the way that I normally do these, for those of you that are new, is that I will just work, okay? So you might see me working for about 20 minutes. You're going to see me jumping back and forth between the mastered single that we just did, and then the one that we're currently working on. So you're going to hear me jumping back and forth a lot. I will give everybody a heads up before we put the limiter on, because the limiters are going to bring everything up substantially. So just give everybody a heads up. That way you watch your ears and turn down whatever you're doing. So here we go. If you have any questions, like I said, jump in the chat. Corey will try to field them as best he can. Otherwise, we'll take a break in a little bit here and just kind of answer and go over what we're doing. Cool. Here we go.
Madison, hey, Madison. right, and this is getting kinda boring. I never thought you would survive. I think it's time.
Okay, just a heads up, we are going to be adding the limiters here. I'll just do it with you on. So yeah, what you're seeing me do right now, just as a quick little thing here, is I'm frequency balancing. I did add a little energy to the drums, but I am just kind of making things pop a little bit, and not pop music, but pop out in that sense, just to give it a little bit more dimension in the individual sounds. And then we'll talk about like the mid-side processing and all that stuff once we take a break. But yeah, I'm gonna put on my master chain here and give it a second to load up, because it's a bunch of stuff. Dun, dun. Cue Price is Right music. Sorry, Jeopardy. All right, so let's see. Here we go. So the limiters immediately are going to add a little bit of gain. I'm going to start cranking up the volume of this, so please watch your ears. Okay, just getting a couple of these things X'd off my screen. Here we go. Oh, bye, tape machine. Not right now. We may need you later. All right, here we go.
Why do I always win this fight? The way she treats you just ain't right, and this is getting kinda boring. I never thought you would survive. I think it's time to say goodbye.
So we got a lot of good work done so far in the time that we've already been doing this. Let me see if there's anything in the chat. Oh, it actually does zoom in on my screen. That's awesome. Okay. Does it zoom in on your end? Cool. That's good because it doesn't do it on Zoom. Excuse me. So let's talk for a minute here. I'm gonna go through some stuff. Let me just see if there's any. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. Let's see. I'm using Madison as a reference for loudness. Okay. Yeah, actually, I'm going to address that immediately here. So let's talk about that. So you might have noticed that I was bringing up the fader on Madison here. Okay, and that's because when I started applying the limiting and I started making things louder, my reference has to get louder as well. Otherwise, I lose that that continuity of the tone between the two. And the thing that it helps me with too is gauge where I am in terms of loudness overall. So, the goals of these streams are to get things like within the 90% range, because there's always going to be, maybe a couple notes from the artist. I hear something different the next day, or I take a break and I come back, I hear something different. And that, it's just the way it is. But basically, I think we're already in that 90%. But the thing is the loudness, right? We still may need another dB or half a dB of loudness, and that is a balancing act in and of itself. But we'll get to that. So let's hopefully that answers your question. So yeah, Madison was the reference. That's a previously mastered single that we just kind of finished up. I think we're like 99% done with that one. Nonetheless, it was a good example of sort of the vision of the project. So I hope that answered your question. Hope so. So let's are there any other immediate questions before we get started on talking about kind of what I did here? If not, I'll go ahead and move on. Cool. I'll let Corey can keep an eye out for that stuff. So let's talk about what we have going on here. First thing that you saw me do is address the drums. And as I'm listening, I might also go in and do a little mid-side processing on the vocal, but more on that. So yeah, drums. Drums were the thing that needed the most energy besides the overall mix, and these things can change, right? The producer might be like, "Hey, you destroyed my drums," and I'll be like, "Damn, all right, let me fix that." But as of right now, it feels right. But let's look at what I did here. So I'm using a mid-side compressor, so the Slate Digital FGMU. We have it on mid-side mode. You can see there, and you can see that I'm bumping up the input because I'm trying to get impact out of the center image of the drums. The drums are like, they're big, they're mixed great, but there's just a little extra oomph that I'm missing from the middle, that impact. And because the drums are already mixed, and a lot of that impact is going to come from the kick and snare, which is in the center, mid-side processing is going to help me do that. So for those of you that are not aware, mid-side processing is taking instead of the whole stereo image, right? If I was to just leave this on stereo and turn up the input to both channels, I would be compressing the whole drums and essentially making them louder if I turn up the input. And then with mid-side mode, I'm only doing it to the middle. So here's your left and right stereo image. Okay, I'm just doing it to this part of the stereo field. So the kick and snare are all that are really being affected with any other center information. So let me look at the question here that I have in the chat. Yeah, that's actually a great question about dynamic EQ. So yeah, the question is about dynamic EQ versus regular EQ, and you have to remember that regular EQ, in the sense of mastering and mixing, think of it more as balancing frequencies. I think you lose impact when you EQ the impact out, right? There's a very fine line between a sound having an abundance or deficiency, right, versus something just having something just inappropriately carved out to the point where you're losing impact. So remember, we're doing things just to balance stuff, and in the case of mastering, we're sometimes trying to mask issues a little bit or just balance issues back so that they're not as forward. If we start to lose impact, then that is going to definitely affect the way the music's acting. So, but dynamic EQ, remember, is very similar to compression. So with dynamic EQ comes motion, right? Because it's responding, it's going down and up depending on the speed of your attack and release times, and that is going to bring a sense of motion into the sound, right? We can make it smoother, we can make it more aggressive. But the point is that it's not only adding motion, but it's a sense of control, right? It's a fluctuating control over time, whereas EQ is just, carving out the sound and just kind of sets it and it stays there. So it's a difference in choice between, do you need something that fluctuates and controls, or just do you need something to mold the sound the way it is? So I think that's sort of at least my justification for using just the regular EQ versus going for, say, the Pro Q3 and using that instead. So yeah, just some food for thought to keep in mind. But regarding this mid-side compression, we are adding that impact in the middle. He's got big, awesome drums, and we're just trying to give it that added hit in the middle. I didn't really use the mix wet dry. Yeah, it's at 100%, so I was pretty happy with what I was getting. And if we listen, we may have. Do we even have any compression here? Barely any. Yeah, barely any. It's really just there to give us more volume and whatever tone this compressor, which is great for rock, by the way. All right, so we got infinity EQ. I'm using probably mid-side mode in this because I love mid-side. Oh, no, looks like I did use stereo. So, here's an example of just balancing back some frequencies that I thought were a little muddy, or we could say almost resonant in the drum. So it wasn't clean to me. And I think there may be something to do with the overheads and whatever bleed. I think these are sequence drums. They do a great job. Like, his producer just does an awesome job of sequencing drums. They sound like they're being played by a real drummer. But that being said, whether that was a live recording or whether that was samples, there's something that's sort of like in the low mids. This is really more lows, honestly. That just needs to be controlled, right? I'm not trying to just like suck it out completely. I don't want to eliminate it. It's still part of the sound. We're just balancing it back because the energy is just a little too overwhelming. Remember, clarity sometimes just comes from very small things. It's not like these huge, giant cuts and moves. It's little balances that add up to be one cohesive thing. Now, here we have, I'm actually doing side EQ, so not mid, but on the sides. And you may have heard at a moment, I brought this frequency all the way up, and I did that so that I almost heard a mono sound because I eliminated all the frequencies in the sides for that moment just to make sure that, it was working, I could hear it. I went probably all the way up to 1K or something, and it lost all its stereo imaging, and then I brought it back, and all that imaging started to come back. So what I was listening for at that point was just trying to get the stereo width without it sounding too thin, so bringing enough of it back, but then at the same time making that sub-information a little bit more mono, okay? And I'm taking the side information away. It's not like I'm taking a mono plugin and doing that to the, the sub-frequencies like some plugins do, like the, Ableton has one right here under the utility. See how it says bass mono? That's an example of taking this frequency and below and actually folding it together like a sandwich, right? What we're doing here is we're just taking the bread off completely and just leaving the middle. That's how side cutting works, is we're actually eliminating that. So but it's for the purpose of clarity, right? Once we get louder, that stuff's going to become more apparent. So we're hoping to make room for that stuff to get louder and for that energy to be focused in the right places. So then we have, I opened up my slate. Love my slate. In here we have. Oh yeah, let's take a look at that really quick, and then we'll keep going here. Good questions, by the way, everybody. Yeah, I could have. So his question is, he basically said, "Oh, I thought you were carving the frequencies out of the mids or the mid, I'm assuming of mid side, to control transients of the kick to gain more volume. You could look at it like that. That's the thing. Like we all have different ways to explain this stuff. To me, subconsciously, it could very easily be that. It could very easily be, yeah, I'm doing this to get more punch to control the transients. Absolutely, it's all that. But to me personally, I think the best way I was able to describe it was, we're balancing frequencies to gain clarity. To you, it may be translated as, oh, that's to get better clarity of transients. That way you can make it louder and punchier. So yeah, it's all those things. So you're absolutely spot on with that. And just to be clear, no pun intended, we have, this is it. This is actually in stereo. That's in stereo mode right there. I didn't do that in the mid. So this is just side, and this is complete. Like hold on, let me get my, come on EQ. There we go. This is actually happening in stereo. This band here. Yeah, awesome questions. So I use the slate channel right here just to add the. I'm not doing anything else. This isn't there. Not doing anything there. Not doing anything there. We're just left with the distressor, which is going to help us get a little bit of that attitude with the drums. Once I dialed it in, I basically brought back the mix wet dry and then brought that in a little bit to add some of that impact. Remember, I don't want to change their mix, but it's definitely a great mix that just needs that extra, as I like to say, that extra 10 to 15%, and that's really what we're here to do. And yeah, so that's basically what we had with the drums. So not a whole lot needed, nothing needed on the bass. Guitars, now here's an example of cutting with mid-side EQ, but in the middle. Okay, so we have the middle that's basically being balanced back to leave room for things like the kick and the bass, while at the same time giving us width, because we're removing things from the middle, which is leaving all of that fatness in the sides, which is going to give us a sense of width because of because of the nature of mid-side. So we can dive more into that maybe in a like a special broadcast just about it or something. But yeah, that's going on there. So that really helps me get that width, a little bit more clarity. And then we have our EQ here, which is something I like to do with a lot of my sounds. I mean, you saw me do it with the vocals, you saw me do it with the guitars. I didn't do it with the drums. I may still, but just finding something that sounds nice and boosting it and just giving it a little dimension. This kind of gives it a little bit of warmth, also a little bit of size. It felt like it added something to the overall picture without necessarily changing the mix. So I just added this. I experimented, 540. Don't know why. Just found out it's 540. But I knew it was somewhere in the low mids to mid, range. And we're looking at 2.5 dB. That's actually pretty substantial. Yeah, and that was it for that EQ. So just a little EQ on the guitars. On the vocals, did the same thing where I found something nice in the 700 to 800 hertz, boosted a little bit, a dB. And then let's talk about the master chain. So we added the 2 ozone. So we have our meter. We can't neglect our meter, right? This is, besides our references, this is going to give us a nice idea of where we are. Because I'm not playing anything, it's not showing a very heavy LUFS value. But the goal is to master at -1 true peak, and then to have, with this genre, we're definitely going to be sitting somewhere between -6 and -5 probably, -6.5 to -5. So that is that, and then we have a couple limiters here. I like to use 2. I have the last limiter at true peak. That way we give ourselves that nice -1 dB of headroom, and then I have a second limiter before that to kind of break up the work, right? Different release times, different limiting settings overall. You can see true peak is set on the second one, meaning the one that's at the very end of the signal chain, and then the one before that does not have true peak on it. It's just set to 0. It's just there to limit and limit only. Now on these, you'll notice the different release times. So they normally default to 2. So you can see I brought this back a little bit. When you're doing stuff that's Well, I mean, even if you're not going loud, I mean, everybody's going loud, but I find that the release time really helps things just kind of pop, kind of in the way EQ can make things pop. But you'll notice as you pull the release times to a faster value, you'll start getting those transients just kind of hitting, and if you do it too much, you'll get distortion. So you'll notice I did it way faster here. I couldn't get away with doing them both fast, but once you start getting that distortion that you don't want, you find that the release time will help you remedy that. But then there's a sort of a balance there. There's a battle, if you will, because you make your release time slower, the master gets quieter, and then you start getting more of a sort of a glue kind of limiting, and then you want to find the right balance so that way you're not losing too much of that impact if you need it, depending on the genre you're working on. So transparency is good to a point. Aggressiveness is good to a point. You got to find the happy medium. I use the M stereo expander to make things just wider and give it more depth. We're looking at about 14% is actually pretty big. I don't know if you guys heard that, but yeah, just kind of like started hearing the guitars and stuff kind of reaching out beyond the speakers, and it gives us a nice sense of width and depth. You did see me go back and forth between Madison as a reference with the EQ, because there's definitely, I really like the low end and the low mids in Madison, so I made sure to match that. Translates really well, in my opinion. Took a little bit of the muddiness out, but I ended up adding some of it back. I realized I was going too far, so just adding some of that back to make sure. It's good to be able to identify when you're doing too much and just add a little back, as opposed to potentially going to another EQ and adding more there. That's a very easy thing, an easy, I guess, hole to dig yourself into. You want to keep track of the things that you're doing, so that way you can try and just undo things if you have to, as opposed to counterbalancing or counteracting, doing things that might be counteracting what you've already done. Took a little bit of the harshness out, boosted a little bit on the high end. This high frequency band doesn't have a selection for frequencies, so I kind of just do it and pray that it works, and it did. If it was too harsh, then I might go to this EQ and use this instead, because it has a variable frequency. So maybe that might be the case. So yeah, that's basically what we're looking at in terms of that stereo EQ. Then I did go into infinity EQ, and I balanced back a little bit of that muddiness that I was hearing in like the 200. And some of you have seen me do this before. If you haven't, my EQ technique is rarely to boost to find. I normally cut hard to hear what I want to balance go away. And that's a psychological thing for me, to try to keep myself from fatiguing my ears by boosting things or like psyching myself out. Just because you boost something a bunch, for me, everything sounds better after that. So the idea for me is to just kind of find a way to find what I'm doing without messing with my psyche so much. So I'm doing middle, right? Mid in the middle. So I'm balancing a little bit of that back. And again, balancing the frequencies between the instruments was my first step. So what I'm doing here and what I'm doing here is a response to that balance, right? So now everything is balanced. Now I'm adjusting everything together, right? Whereas if things aren't balanced, you find yourself doing things on the stereo bus to compensate, like multiband compression, or there's a lot of things that you might find yourself doing that won't be as necessary if you just go in and you balance your frequencies from track to track. So did a little bit more here with that mid-side compression like I did on the drums. I may do some of this on the vocal to see if I can get some impact out of his voice. But this is only a certain percentage. I started doing this. We started hearing the distortion because the limiters are on. The volume's already up, and we're starting to hit things pretty hard. So generally, what I'll do is I'll do this a little bit, and then I'll be like, that's definitely too aggressive, and then I'll pull the mix wet dry all the way down to 0. And then bring it in, and I just kind of notice, like you take it away, everything's kind of big and pretty, and you start adding a little bit of that back in, and you can just bring up that impact a little bit, just to give it something special, just to give it that little bit of impact that kind of sets it apart from being done. Supercharger, love this compressor. Native Instruments. I thought I put it on punch mode. Generally it defaults to a slow attack, fast release time, and you saw me hit it pretty hard. I wanted to get it so that I can get a little bit more of that aggressive feel into the master. Also an added amount of punch on the transients, so the slow attack time is going to give me that punch. I didn't do anything with saturation, but you can see I played with the mix wet dry. Too much just makes everything sound kind of flat and gross, so I want to make sure that I'm getting a nice balance of that. So let's see. Looks like we got a question here, and then we'll go back to jump into part 2. So let's see what we got here. Okay, just some good words. Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump back into it. I'm going to take a listen to our references and just fine-tune things. I might try to get some of the loudness in there, and you might see me work on the vocal a little bit. Here we go.
Why do I always win this fight? The way she treats you just ain't right, and this is getting kind of boring. My time on you, I never thought you would survive. I think it's time to say goodbye. I know, you know, you'll never ever change. I know, you know, you'll always be the same. I think it's time for us to leave. Let's run away, just you and me. You think we're okay, but we're stuck up on that 40-year-old fuck. I swear she'll put us in our coffins. And every time I come around, she never stops running her mouth. I'm telling you that woman's toxic.
So, by the way, this is the producer's mix, right? That I mentioned with the stems are off of. You might have heard me flip to it really quick. This is where we're at so far. So we've made drastic improvements. So this is where it was.
I know, you know, you'll never ever change. I know, you
Here we
know,
are.
you'll always be the same. I think it's time for us to leave. Let's run away, just you and me.
So hopefully you can hear that difference, right? That clarity, that quality, the depth, the impact. Like, it's definitely there. So yeah, this is why we're doing this. So let's go ahead and keep working.
I know, why you always will never ever change. I know, you know, you'll always be the same. I think it's time for us to leave. Let's run away, just you and me. I know, you know, she'll always be the same. I think it's time for us to leave. Let's run away, just you and me. I think
So, man, yeah, you can see me right now. I'm really getting into the thick of like the details with this stuff. There's a different tolerance, as I said in the beginning of this, in terms of like the aggressiveness, the distortion that you might get out of the louder masters, and even like from within the genre, there's much cleaner versions of even in this genre, in the rap genre, R&B, like EDM. Like you're gonna find clean, you're gonna find dirty, you're gonna find different flavors of attitude. And you know, with this particular project, I think we're erring more on the side of just kind of aggressive, in terms of, you know, we're not afraid of low end, or, you know, hitting that limiter hard, getting things really loud. You know, and a byproduct of getting things really loud is that distortion from time to time. So what you're seeing me do at this point is I'm really just I'm trying to push things over the edge. Like I have something already, like before I even got back into this, something that was already beyond what a lot of people would have considered mastered, because the loudness was there. It was already better than the pre-master. We were already there, but now I'm pushing it to a point where not only am I trying to match the reference, but I'm even doing a little bit of experimenting. I mean, this is honestly like sometimes what you have to do in order to see what works. I mean, if we kind of look here at, you know, Supercharger, I ended up taking that thing down from like, I think I was almost at 100% down to barely anything, because I realized that the compression was actually making things sound a little small. And as I backed this off, I started getting all this nice, like kind of beefy transient out of the drums, and I was like, well then fuck it, let's take that off. I tried adding a little bit more of this center impact, you know, using the mix wet dry. I could just try doing it here, well, who knows. But then I actually added some of the output, not input, right? I'm not hitting the compressor any harder, but the output on the sides of the master to make it feel even wider. So I'm just trying to push that depth, that dimension that you know we want out of a modern master. I think it was in here or in the drums. No, I didn't do it here. It was in the drums. I did a. Okay, just give me 1 second. I know we got a question here. Let's see. I definitely experimented with adding some more low end. I just love that aspect of the other songs on the project, so I want to get it up to that level. You saw me play with the limiting. You saw me pull the threshold down a little bit more on this limiter. You saw me play with the release time. Again, like that fine line between what's too distorted and what's acceptable. We're already in like the -6 range of you know, of our LUFS, which is like, you know, how much louder can you go? Well, I'm using the references as a challenge to that, right? How much louder can I go? I'm going to see. There's just a code that I'm trying to crack. The drums were probably the most that you saw me do here. I added, actually, let me field this question, and then let me just, yeah, that way you don't see me zooming in like crazy. Let's see what we got here. No one's ever too late for the party, Johnny. I appreciate you coming. Let's see. So we got Mateo here. Hey, Mark, could you explain a little bit? Yeah, that great timing. Let's see. So let's talk about that. Seeing if that was the only question. Yeah. So basically what we're doing here is we're looking at the signal chain for the drums, and I'm going to get to that gate in just a second. I may have added more of this center impact. You know, just here's the thing. At some point, we have to realize that this is a different song than the previous song, okay? And this is a fault of my own. I always want to match stuff. I work really hard to match things, and then I always come back. I pull myself back and realize, like, okay, this is a different song. These drums are bigger than the other song. They're meant to sound bigger. So at some point, I have to do more embracing of that sound and less of the pushing to what I want. Because the artist might come back. Actually, in the first song, in Save Me, the one that's already out, they were saying, like, can you make it bigger like the pre-master? And I went back to the pre-master, and I was like, oh, there's all that reverb in the voice. You know, I went too hard on that mid-side stuff, and I lost some of the size because I was pushing up that middle impact too much. So at some point, I have to embrace that and realize that, you know, we're not trying to remix their song. So I think we're getting in a pretty good place right now. but I did try to challenge myself by adding some of that center impact. I think I pulled this down just a touch more because we were getting louder. So those, the balance of those frequencies is going to get thrown off a little bit as we get louder. So I have to adjust. Now, the gate, right out the gate. So we got here this slate gate. It's an amazing drum gate. It's just very intuitive. What you saw me do here, Mateo, and that's why I love this question, is I soloed this, and try to follow along with me here, folks, because if you're not into like more of the advanced stuff, this might feel a little bit over your head, but that's okay, right? Maybe this will be your aha moment. But basically what's happening here is I'm adjusting what the gate is listening to. Okay, so if I just solo these drums really quick and solo this button right here. The only reason I'm doing that is because I'm trying to just get the gate to listen to the kick and snare. I don't want it to listen to the cymbals. I don't want it to listen to the hi-hat. I don't want it to listen to, the tom's fine. But ultimately, I'm focusing on the low end because that's where majority of the kick and snare energy is. So that's why I did that. So I'm just setting what it's listening to, and then the gate is going to respond. It's only going to open on the kick and snare. So why am I doing this? The whole reason I'm doing this is because, like, for example, here's the kick, right, and the snare. We'll say this is them in volume. And then we have the cymbals. And this is why I did this. He's like, doing that open cymbal, open hi-hat stuff. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to offset the relationship of the kick, snare, and the other information, even the reverb. So basically, if I was to turn this range right here, this range, all the way down. Let's see what I got out right now. I got it at 1.18. So if I turn this all the way down, listen to what it does. So what you heard it doing was you heard it getting real choppy because, hold on, just making sure I got it back to my setting. There we go. So it's getting real choppy because it's going, it's dropping to 100 dB down whenever the gate isn't being triggered. So that relationship of the kick, snare, and everything else is now this, like they're gone. It's silence. But as I bring that level up, I now change it to something that's just a dB or so off. So I'm really just mixing the drums, right? I'm just giving the kick and snare and the stuff that I really want to hit just a little bit more forwardness, and I'm bringing everything else back using the gate. This is a great gate to do that with. I mean, we're dealing with a stereo bounce of drums. It's not it's not like we're dealing with individual multi-tracks or anything like that. So that's the challenge, right? So we gotta use the tools that we have, and this does a great job. And that's all I didn't tweak the release time or anything, so it's basically all I'm doing there. Experiment a little bit with the low end so that I could make that kick hit a little bit harder. I did add something in about 700 hertz, just a little tone. You might have heard me crank it up and then bring it back to just where it's barely doing anything, but 0.3 dB, It's just enough to give it a little something, just a little bit something that I liked that's not getting in the way of other things. And and that's basically it. So I think I also added a little something extra in the guitars. Yeah, I definitely experimented with bumping up this a little bit more. Like I said, guitars are hard, man. And it's like I added a little bit of just air and almost borderline a little edge because it's on that like 8K around there and up. And then that, this is adding body and warmth, and it kind of just feels right in the mix. So basically what we're dealing with here is I got something about 90 to 95% in front of you. What I'm going to be doing at this point, we're basically done for the evening for this stream, but I'm saying that after this, I will probably give this another few listens, fine tune it, make sure that I get it pretty close to the way Madison feels, or not. I might leave it like closer to this and then send it and get their feedback and then fine tune it as needed. I don't want to spend 2 days on something if it's just for me. I want to make sure to see that I'm going in the right direction, see how they're feeling, so that we can get this thing done. So Oh, yeah, let's see what other questions we got here. Yeah, keep them coming. Like any questions that you have, I definitely want to address them. Let's see. Compress the middle of the sign instead of playing with the output of the Fairchild. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So the output of when you're dealing with output of a compressor, right, you're not hitting the compressor harder. You're just getting gain out of that channel. And in the sake of a mid-side compressor, if I'm just turning up the output of the sides, I'm just getting the sides to come up in volume. I'm not turning up the input, which will give me volume, but it also hits the compressor harder potentially, right, and gives me that that artifact of compression if it's needed. So yeah, that's basically what's happening there. Oh, you know what? Let me go to the vocal really quick. Great questions. On the vocal, I did do a little bit of that mid-side compression, but I realized I was making the vocal too up front in the mix. So you can see I brought it way back. I'm at 15%. So that's a little bit about what's going on there. So yeah, any other questions? Questions, comments, concerns? I'm going to go ahead and play us out with Save Me, which is, like I said, the single that's out by Hey Duke, You Suck. You all need to check that out. Stream it. You're always welcome to reach out to me or Corey on Instagram or wherever you find us. We're happy to answer any questions. And yeah, super excited everybody showed up. Look out for this archive. It's going to be on the Color Mind YouTube channel, so definitely subscribe to Color Mind Music. Just find that on YouTube. You'll see all the other archives on there. And then additionally, check out my website if you get a chance, markbarriemusic.com. And yeah, just keep your eye on Instagram, and we'll make sure to post more about the upcoming streams. And I hope everybody learned something. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next stream. I appreciate it. Do we have any last-minute questions? No? Just double checking here before I let you go. I don't want you all to, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. All right, cool. Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. We're hoping to do more of these. Just keep going, okay? All right, thanks, everybody.